Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Welcome everyone to DataPark webinar on manual data entry and graphic scripting, where we will utilize our graphic scripting to create some custom solutions. Today's presenters are myself, Hannah Morgan. I'm a senior project engineer here at Capstone with the DataPark team. I graduated from the University of Washington with a chemical engineering degree and have been working for Capstone ever since, plus a few internships right before graduation.
Yeah, and my name is Molly Colwell. I've been with DataPark for a little over 4 years now, and also a chemical engineer from WSU. So, go Cougs.
Go Ducks. All right, going over our agenda for today's webinar, we will be going into a variety of use cases and examples where graphic scripting and manual data entry were used in tandem. Then Molly will be digging into an example use case in depth, talking about what it was created for and the requirements, and actually going into the code and the graphics designer with that example. We will be answering all of your questions at the end. Also, I wanted to preface that some of our examples assume some familiarity with the ParkView tools of graphics, graphic scripting, and manual data entry, but please feel free to put any questions that you have into the chat, whether they're about specific graphics or about graphics in general, and we will do our best to answer them. As you can see here on the screen, here's a quick screenshot of the GoToMeeting webinar UI. Please feel free to utilize the questions and/or the chat as we go through this webinar. All right, let's dig into some use cases. The first use case example we wanted to chat about is utilizing graphic scripting to do some data validation. So within manual data entry, you can do data validation on a value range, but you can actually utilize graphic scripting to do extra data validation. In this use case, the scripting checks to make sure that a record is created in a different manual data entry sheet for this product before it allows you to create a new record within this manual data entry for the same product. So it ensures that you're following step 1 and then step 2. In this example, we are able to pull data from a third-party database and then put it into our manual data entry sheet. So the steps to do this are we type in a username into the box and hit the search button. The scripting then returns a variety of records based upon that username and some various columns. We can then select one of these records and hit Save Selected to actually save it to our manual data entry. This allows us to save information that may be in a differing order as the process changes. If things were taken out of turn, it allows you to customize and utilize that. In this next example, we utilize the start and end time dropdown up at the top to select a variety of records within that start and end time. Once we've selected a record, it actually updates the start and end time of 2 manual data entry sheets within the same graphic. So even though these have different record configurations, and therefore, one is creating a record at a shift schedule, and the other is creating a record every 2 hours, we can actually tie the timestamp of what records show up to a single record selector. This MDE graphic was investigated in depth by Nick Eimers on a separate webinar, and it's a sample MDE graphic that is available on the forum for downloading. Our next example is a bit more open-ended to show what is possible. So we can tie just about anything to button scripting. So we can also tie saving MDE values and ... several other things. We could save values in an MDE and kick off a Park task workflow. We could also then run a report. We could then open up another display to see how those MDE values we've saved impact that other display, or even set up some code to export that data that we've saved to our own manual data entry database to potentially a different database. And we can tie any of those in tandem to the same button. Our next example looks at, based upon a grade selection, customizing information that is visible on the graphic. So within our manual data entry configuration on its own, we can configure different tests and specs to show up within the manual data entry grid. What is scripted then is the stuff that shows up to the left of that, where we have more information about that test method, the test frequency. We could even add data links to grade-specific documentation, and the visibility of that is tied to the graphic scripting based upon what grade your machine is running. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Molly to do our in-depth client use case.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, so first off, just want to explain the problem we were running into and why we went with MDE graphic. So the site had a broke utility tracker. So it was built in-house, and it was becoming more and more challenging to maintain. So they wanted to get it out of that in-house tool and into ParkView. Another reason for doing that is because they wanted to trend the data in ParkView and be able to use it along with their process data and other displays. So they really wanted it out of that in-house tool and into ParkView. So in order to do that, we replicated that tool with MDE, and we chose to use the graphics designer with MDE so that we could add some automations to make filling in the data more efficient and quicker. So within this, and today as we're going to walk through a very similar example, we're going to be using the graphics designer, MDE, and VB.NET scripting. So let's go ahead and do a demo. I'll just show you how the graphic works, and then we'll get into some code. All right, so first off, we have our grade selector. So this is just our normal grade selector. And then we have this barcode scanner. So the site has a barcode that is 11 digits, and they wanted to, when they scan it, it just, wherever the cursor is, it fills in with those digits. And so what we did is automatically moved the cursor from this box to the next box once that's scanned, so you could reduce the clicks. So yeah, after the 11 digits, it just jumps to the next one for us. Then we can type in the width of that broke and jump over to the reason. So selecting the text box actually pulls up our reason selector. And this may look very familiar because it is the same reason selector we get for alarm events. We have it coded to a specific parent reason so that we're not seeing every single reason within the tree, but we just have a small subset here. And so then we can select our reason. and it'll add it there in our text box. And then we have room for a comment. Great. So now that we have all that data prepped, we can hit submit, and it'll actually save that record, those values in the MDE for us. So the scan actually separates into 3 different tags. In this case, the first 5 digits were the lot, this next 4 were the set, and the final 2 were the role. So without having, reduce some human error in there, it just automatically takes that barcode scan and puts it in that lot, set, and role for us. We also have the width, which then is calculated. There's calculation for the weight, and then the reason gets added here as well. As you'll notice, I can't click on here. We've put a box on top of this to help prevent unnecessary edits for this MDE. So if we wanted to edit it, we would choose Edit Records. And when I'm in this edit mode, all of the buttons are actually disabled, so I can't add a new record. Again, this was just to prevent any errors when entering the data. So now I can maybe change a reason, my dropdown, or add a new comment. So I can edit it, and when I hit save, all my buttons are enabled again, and the box comes back up. So we also have
Alrighty, it looks like Molly froze. I was just verifying that was the case for everyone and not my own computer. So while she is rejoining the webinar, I will continue to talk about exactly what she was going, even though she's the one sharing her screen, so I can't move the mouse around for you.
All right, there we go.
And you're back. I didn't even have to fill too much.
Wonderful. Oh, sorry, where did I cut out?
You cut out right before you were about to hit the trim button, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right, so yes, we have the trim. So we have automated with that need to in there. When you select it, it just automatically fills there. They didn't want or anything that weight. All is the scan value. And then the slab, the weight was a little different, so use this slab, how big your roll, adjust installation there a little bit as well. Okay, so that is how we use the graphic. So now we can dive in how it was created. Do you want to go items that are not affected? So what you can use just out of the box, a little bit of the items that are not specific to MDE, and then finally we'll go into MDE how we together.
All right, I'm getting some reports that you guys are having some audio issues. Thanks for letting us know about your user experience, we'll have Molly turn her camera off, and hopefully that helps with the connection. Molly, are you still here with us audibly?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's give this a whirl.
Great. So I'm in just with the pulled up, and I just wanted to talk through that.
Actually, Molly, I'm going to pause you and let's have you call in because the audio is still a little bit choppy for us.
Sorry.
We appreciate everyone's patience. You know, virtual work is facts of life, and sometimes things happen. So we'll have her call in, and hopefully the audio gets better. And we want to make sure that Molly's audio is 100% as she goes through the demonstration of the actual code, which is, of course, what we're all here for. And behind the scenes, behind the curtain look at the magic that makes programs like this run. While we're waiting for Molly to call back in, are there any questions that y'all want to put in either the chat or the question box to have me answer?
All right, can you hear me now, Hannah?
Oh, I can hear you now. So ignore that. Still feel free to put questions in and we'll get to them at the end. But your audio sounds much better, Molly.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Right. So now I'm in Graphics Designer, and we'll go ahead and walk through some of the code here. So first off, some of the things that don't require any scripting. We have the grade dropdown. So within the controls toolbox in the ParkView custom controls, we have our grade selector. I'll just drop that in here so I can show you how to configure it real quick. So you have this toolbox, this tool, and this is where you choose your location and the process. And then based on that, it will tie to that grade type. So you just use those drop downs to choose your grades, and then if you want, you can choose the default grade. But that's all that item is, so no scripting required there. Next, we have the MDE grid itself. So this doesn't require any scripting, and it is in our MDE controls. So we have a lot of different options here, but we are using the MDE grid. The other option there is the MDE config. So when you use this one, you'll actually use tag viewers. So that's individual boxes, which will allow you to make more of a user form instead of the grid feel. So that's the difference between those two. And lastly, we have the text boxes. So these are right at the top, and just want to show that they're not. There's no scripting in order to use these. You just can click and drag, and then you have a field you can type in. All right, let's move on to some of the items that are scripted. So first, we have the barcode scan box, and if we look over to the left in the animation, we can see that we have on text change run this script. So we did add some script to the text box here, and let's take a look at that. So if we hit the ellipses, it will just open up for us. I can zoom in here. So what we wanted to do on this one was to move the cursor from the barcode scan box to the width box once a length was met. And in this case, it was 11 characters long. What we decided to use a constant so that this could be changed or moved to a different site, and you guys can change it faster. At the end of this, we'll have this graphic posted, so you'll be able to use it yourself and look at the code a little better. So just at the top here, we have our constant for the barcode character length of 11. So once it hits 11, then the keyboard is going to focus on the width box. So that jumps the cursor for us. The next item was the reason tree text box. So in this case, instead of the text change function, we're using the got focus. So when the cursor actually goes into the reason text box, it is going to run this code. So we have our reason selector here. This is the actual control that pulls up that box. And then we have some requirements in here. So the location and our reason ID are the main ones I want to focus on. So in this case, we said the location was just the default location. So you could hard code this into a specific location, but this just makes it so that if you go from one site to another, it's always going to choose the default location. And then this last option is the reason ID, the parent reason ID that we started with. And this, you'll actually have to go into the database to see what your reason ID is. We made this a constant so that you could change this quickly. All right. And lastly, the other item in here that isn't specific to MDE is the edit records button. So here is our script for that. So it's on click. It's going to run this code. And we made it a new stub so that we could reference it other times in case we needed to. So it jumps down to this code. And what it does is it's going to change the visibility of our MDE cover. So again, that's just a rectangle that we made a little transparent, so you can't click onto it. So we changed the visibility to hidden. And then we disabled all of the buttons. So these are our buttons, and we toggled the is enabled to false. And lastly, we also hid that edit button because we have the save and cancel button hidden behind it. Okay. So that is, yeah, that's pretty much what we have for the non-MDE scripting. So now we'll dive into what is actually scripted for MDE. So we have this submit button, and yeah, let's go ahead and dive into that. So when we hit the submit button, it's actually again going to take us to another stub, submit MDE record, and we have a value of 0 in here. So we have a variable that we're going to transfer over to our other stub. And we actually use the submit MDE record for the save button and the trim and the slab. So again, we wanted to create a new sub for it so we didn't have to rewrite the code so many times. All right, so let's go ahead and scroll down to our actual save. Here we go. So here is our sub, and this, as we have a comment here to show that this actually saves the value, and it tells us what our variable is. So it is a weight value, and that is just the weight for the default weight for the trim in case we want to overwrite it with something else. In this case, it's 0, so we're not going to. All right, the only two variables we're starting out here are a double and a string. So we just very simply declared those. And yeah, let's get into it. So we're going to add a new record and grab it. So we chose the record name, or we chose record, and then manual data entry data model records IMDE record. So this is kind of the reason why we're doing this webinar. We do have IntelliSense within the graphics designer, but this is 4 layers deep. So it could be it is a little bit challenging to get started with this MDE scripting because there are so many layers to it. And even the MDE grid control. So we're saying that MDE grid control data entry model add new record. So in order to get to this add new user created record, you have a couple things you have to get there first. So we wanted to show you guys what those first ones were so that your IntelliSense comes up for you. You know which ones to pick. And we will have, like I said, this graphic will be available after the webinar, and we also have a single page PDF with some of these common items to use that will also be available after the webinar. Okay, so now we've added that new record. Now we want to add the grade. So we have our grade selector, but we want to put the grade that we selected into our grade field. So that's what we're doing. After we filled all this out, we're actually putting this top data into the MDE. Okay, so we're saying our grade name is from the grade selector itself. And then we are getting the record, finding the grade name cell, and setting the value. So we're setting the value to that grade selector, grade ID and grade name. And then finally, in this case, this isn't required, but it helps for the audit record. We are modifying the audit record to show that the cell has been modified by the user. So it just helps with the audit record, and this is something that you can access in the script, in scripting as well. So we're adding that piece to it. Okay, so now we've added the grade. It's time to separate that barcode into our lot, our set, and our role. So in this case, we are setting the barcode to a text. I made up, values for this. So I think you can have an alphanumeric barcode, and that's why we are using a text instead of a numeric value. Plus, we want it to trend as a text tag instead of numeric. So that also might be consideration as to which one you choose. So first off, we're going to set our variable string to the barcode box. So that is what was in here. So that we're going to set it there. And then we're going to redefine it, and we're going to do the lot first. So we're going to do a substring from the first position to the lot length position. So earlier at the top, we had those constants where we set what the lot size was, what the set size, and the role size. So these are all variables. So in this case, it's the lot length was 5. So if you didn't want to use variables, this would look like 0, 5 instead. Okay, so now that we have that length, we're going to find the cell and cast it. So here we're determining, defining that cell, and this is a text tag. So later on, we'll see very similar code, but a numeric tag. And then we're going to cast the record, so the same record we've been using, and we have to define the tag name. So this is the full tag name, the site dot the source. In this case, the source is going to always be MDE dot the tag name. So you need the full UTag name here. And again, I just made this a variable, so it could be a little more dynamic. instead of typing in the whole name. And then again, you have your data model, cell, text cell. So this was built at the top with my other constants. We can go back and look at that at the end here. So I'm putting my string in there, and I'm saying if the cell is not equal to the string now, then I want a message box to pop up that said we could not set the barcode value. Otherwise, I am going to make that edit that record in the audit table that this was modified by the user. So that is this check here. And then we do it again. So we redefine the text value for the string. We change the string length. So now instead of starting from 0, we're starting from the lot length and going to the set length. And we're doing that all again. So now instead of the set or the lot tag, we have the set tag. And then finally, we go to the last one, which is the roll length. And my starting number is going to be the lot length plus the set length, and then the roll length is the ending. Again, same if-then statement. All right, now we have our width tag, and this one's a little different because instead of the string, it is a double. So we're going to try to see if we can make it a double first, and then we're going to now use a numeric tag cell instead of a text tag cell, and do the record tag cells, all of the same information up here, but now with our width tag. We do the same check, and now we're going to clear that width box, which is something I skipped over here. Once we're done with all that barcode stuff, we clear that barcode box and the width box so that it's ready to use for those next records. All right, so same thing for the reason box and the comment. I won't go into anything too much in here because we're just doing the same exact code again. So you just need to step through it one at a time. And yeah, this is pretty well commented. Anything in green is a comment, and you just do that with a single quote. Okay, so so then we are going to save the MDE record. So we grab the control, data entry model, and then save to the database. And we're saying which record specifically. So in this case, we're not saving a whole control, we're just saving the record. After that, we check to see if we have any weight specific in here. So as we saw at the beginning, when we used the normal submit button, our double weight is 0. But when we use the trim, that's when we get our 500 or 300. So that's when we'd actually cast it. So if our double weight is greater than 0, then we're going to go into this section and overwrite our calc tag. If it's not 0, then we are going to skip it. And the main thing we have to add in here as well is that we are doing the calc override. So since this is a calc override, we have that enabled in the MDE, but we're also specifically coding that in here as well. Okay, so then we save the record again. And then just to be safe, we save the entire grid. So that's the difference between save to database versus the save the record. Yeah, saving the whole MD. So now let's go ahead and look at the reason of those tags so we can see what they look like, those constants. So up here we made all the MGEs, and I made a site prefix. So this is our site name for my sample site, and then the MDE is our source, and then each of these tags have a prefix of PM1. So then I just built all of the tags by putting in that full site prefix and then the value, the tag name. And here are the barcode constants. So we have our overall value and then each of the individual lock and length values. One thing to note when you're running or maybe working on scripts like this, if you can always use the build and debug option for that, but for testing, the run typically won't work because of all the code that you're using. So after the run and debug, if you want to try and test it, you're going to have to open it up in ParkView to do the testing. Typically, the run won't do some of those more complex options. Run in Windows typically does, but just the run is a little more challenging. Okay, so we saw the save. So the other two items in here were the save and cancel buttons. So we'll just jump into that real quick. So our save button is going to do the same thing, just save the whole MDE, and then do our log mode, so turn all those buttons back to visible. However, our cancel button here, we are going to revert back to our original state and not keep any of those items. So we have to log the time and the record, and then we revert the start and end time back to the current state, and then refresh the data so that we don't keep any of those changes that we had. So those are the final two items. So refresh data dot to current. And like I said, this does have IntelliSense. So once you get to the model part, you can see all of your options there. Okay. Yeah, I think that's about it that I have for today in terms of going over the MDE graphics. Did we get some questions, Hannah?
Yeah, and you answered them as you went along, but we can go ahead and refresh since they were asked specifically. The first one was, is there IntelliSense? And as you mentioned, yes, there is IntelliSense to help you explore a bit within the different classes, both ParkView specific and non-ParkView specific. There was also a question on can this graphic be sent out? There will actually be a link sent out to all attendees after this webinar with a link to where within the forum this will be available for download. So this will be made available to you as soon as we process this video and get it uploaded. There was also a question on scripting documentation, and our scripting documentation is in progress. It's constantly developing and evolving, so it is a work in progress. So we do have these webinars. There's some other C-class webinars available. And then, of course, the IntelliSense will show some of those options. Once we have a more comprehensive documentation available, trust me, that will be broadcast pretty widely. Woo, too much coffee. Mouth moving faster than the brain. And then there is a final specific question about MDEs and bad quality. And that is one that I think we might have to dig into a little bit and do some follow-up after this webinar with you before I can safely answer that question. And I believe that is all of the questions that I see. Molly, do you see any others that I may have missed?
Nope, we can give everyone a little more time if we want. For any final questions?
Since
For anyone curious. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, IntelliSense is one of those main questions. Do you want to show what typing, the part graphic and what the options look like when you've typed it out?
Yes, I will. And I'll just do model.
And of course, it's not going to show up now because we talked about it. Screen share.
Yeah. Yeah, this could just be an older version that is not wanting to show it right now. Sometimes the screen shares just don't work. I mean, when I stop sharing, it will work just fine.
It probably will. Do you want to try with maybe not the named grid control, but just the part data in general? So like part data entry or data model. See if that'll kickstart it. We appreciate everyone's patience with the. There we go.
Data model. So yeah, you have all of your options there. Records. Let's see if it kicks in. Unhappy. That's okay. I could have renamed the control too. So.
Gotcha. Yep.
So yeah, that's what the IntelliSense looks like. Gives you those options.
We had one more question come in about libraries or scripts needed to import. For this example, I don't think we needed to add any edited references or things. Some of these come automatically within the scripting options. You can see up top where Molly's showing, it says the part common.wpf controls and part graphics WPF are the specific ones that have those part view options. And I believe any example that we post to the forum will make sure to explicitly say, you need to add this reference or add this import.
And to give you guys a sneak peek at the PDF, we'll have this one. So a couple key items there, how to save, refresh, the grade selector, and things like that.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions. So thanks again, everyone, for your time and attention today. I hope this was helpful, and you'll be getting an email once this webinar and the example are